I'm Adam Walker, a biometrics consultant, and this is the Pharma Prescribed podcast, where leaders, innovators, and hidden voices in healthcare open up. No sound bites, no spin, just raw insight, one prescription at a time. In an industry driven by data, protocols, and pressure, we rarely pause to ask the human questions. What drives us? What breaks us? And what truths live behind the titles we wear? Duncan Kemp is the founder of Saltware Solutions, a software consultancy firm with a mission to empower life science businesses with innovative and reliable solutions that drive efficiency, enhance productivity, and foster growth. With over 20 years leading the development of software for the life science industry, Duncan has translated customer requirements to technical concepts with clarity, so incredible ideas are converted into tangible business assets. His journey began in 1998 during university, while working at a small startup developing site automation software for phase 1 trials. Over a period of 2 decades, Duncan navigated several company acquisitions, which resulted in leading multiple teams of software engineers across continents. In January 24, all that changed when Duncan was restructured out of his role and decided to make the daunting leap into setting up his own business. In March 25, Duncan and I met at the Association of Clinical Data Management event in the beautiful city of Prague. We struck up a friendship and have kept in contact ever since. Duncan, what a delight to see you today. Welcome to Pharma Prescribed.
Adam, thank you. It's been great to be here. What a journey. You just picked up on some of those strange occurrences that happened. And I particularly like the way we've stayed in touch since that ACDM last year.
Likewise, for those of our listeners who are not familiar with you, who are you and what do you do?
Who am I? Okay, I'm Duncan. I am a life sciences leader. I've worked in the software industry for such a long time. I've seen us go from handheld devices for data collection at bedsides, particularly for phase 1 clinics, right up to adapting web-based software so that it can be used to collect data immediately with real-time feedback and response. And then I've managed teams across the globe, having to adapt to video conferences and motivating teams to be able to keep working when time zone challenges are there, and even just helping people to see that there is light at the end of a tunnel when you're working towards a very difficult project.
You're at a very sweet spot around technology, life science, and innovation by the sounds of it. And I would imagine over the last 20 years, you've seen some incredible changes. We can talk about the more recent changes, but I would love historically to put that into some context because things have changed a lot, haven't they?
Definitely. I was working part-time during uni and we were using Scion handheld devices with smart cards. And some of that technology continues, but that developed into mobile devices, into tablets. But when you have to convert to be able to use software on a computer, there are challenges to be made. There's user interfaces to figure out. There's conversations to have with customers to figure out how you go from a handheld device into something that is touchscreen or that is web-based and needing to respond to user input. So yeah, absolutely. Innovation has been such a fundamental part of my career, and solving problems, not just technical problems, but user-based problems that help the end user use software better.
Was that always something that was in you with regards to being a problem solver, looking for solutions and coming up with them proactively?
Looking back at the age of 19, 20, no, I had no idea what I wanted to do. But I've always been somebody who's proactively wanted to get stuff done. Such a huge amount of drive and energy that my family would call me like a rabbit, somebody who just never stopped running around from one task to the next. I was always motivated to help others and to solve problems in the process.
It's a wonderful skill that you have, and it's also presumably very helpful in life as well. There must be plenty of occasions when you need to call upon some of those skills around every other aspect of your life. And I know that you have a very busy family life, if I can bring that into the conversation as well.
You certainly can. So I have 4 children and we started young. We've got teenagers, we've got adults in the house, we've got a lot of busy activities. So it's not just taking people to clubs and so on, but it's the helping out with the home work, it's managing to handle budgets with the older ones. And yeah, just being able to be available for conversations as and when. So yes, it's a busy house.
It certainly must be, and it certainly sounds like it would be. What is the age range you have from your eldest to youngest?
Eldest 20, and then we have 18 and 14 and 12.
That is a fairly broad age range. So when you left university, did you always want to go into the area of software technology? Was it something that came to you later? How did you stumble into that?
So it was weird because I did a marketing degree, which isn't a natural route into software development. So my father, he owned a company and he said, why don't you come and work for me? After many attempts to try and get onto graduate schemes, I went and joined him and we tested, we deployed, we trained, we delivered this product to the market and were able to make it a success. Unfortunately, acquisitions had to take place. And so you have to adapt to the changes, but such a great experience along the way.
That's wonderful. So I gather then that your father must have been fairly instrumental, not just in your learning, but also in the growth and mentorship that he provided you during those early years.
Yep, absolutely. So we would travel together, we would solve problems together. He was such a vital part and still is a vital part of my development. So yeah, absolutely. I love the thought of having mentors, and not just family members, business colleagues, people who are leading you into work and take the time to be able to help guide you in correcting things. I remember some amazing conversations with mentors who would help me correct things like presentations, making sure that I don't repeat myself, making sure that I'm clear, even just in the written word as well, how to reply to a customer, both in person and in the written word.
Yeah, there are some very important skills that I think we learn along the way, and presumably having that guidance from your father into early entrepreneurship set you on a particular trajectory. Is that fair?
That's fair to say. I resisted setting up my own company. I resisted doing anything entrepreneurial for a very long time because I was having such a great time. I was enjoying the development and software. But when the opportunity came up, the restructuring opportunity, I was forced to make a decision about what I wanted to do next. And so the chance came to set up my own company. And it was a fantastic opportunity. And I haven't looked back.
So that came about as a result of a restructure. Redundancy can hit people hard, can't it? I've had two experiences myself, and I think it was something that we spoke about when we met in Prague. It was
Yeah.
something that connected us, our mutual experiences around challenge and the phoenix from the flame moment. Can you
Mm.
talk through that a little bit more?
Yeah, it starts off as a fairly raw emotion, and you go through a cycle of why me, what happened, what did I do? But through thinking that through, evaluating my values, that was a very key step that I took at the beginning of last year. I prioritized what was important to me. And then I remembered that I wanted to set up something on my own. And I sought guidance from people. I reached out to friends, to past acquaintances, and was able to establish some sort of new network in a new way of doing things, and realized that there were people who were for me and championing me to make that change. It does take a bit of an adjustment to how you do things, but yeah, definitely very thankful for that opportunity to change.
It's something that I think many friends and colleagues of ours will not understand until they're pushed into that situation. And like your experience, it can be quite crushing on a personal and professional level to think that you're not wanted anymore, as
Mm,
much as when you then dust yourself up and pick yourself off the ground, you do realize that opportunities are what you make of them, aren't they?
yeah, absolutely. And that was the chance that I had. I didn't want to waste my time lounging around the house. So every day I decided to do something. I would sit at my desk, I would join webinars, I would I would reach out to people on LinkedIn. I probably annoyed some people with my presence, random photos or comments or whatever. But do you know what? Setting myself up with a schedule and tasks that I would complete throughout the week meant that I was busy. And that did help me to stay focused on the task in hand and prioritize how I wanted to get to the next step.
So, what did you learn about yourself during that period? Because most people struggle without structure, and most people are not naturally organizers of their own time when they have an open amount of time. The hardest thing when you are between roles, as I often say, is actually knowing when the next one is coming. We just don't know, do we? So we've got to be proactive. We've got to stay mentally astute and alert. We've got to do the right things that we know are going to serve us, sleep well, eat well, exercise, all those sorts of things. What did you learn during that period of time?
Two big things stand out. One of them was that video calls are not all that bad. The direct video is fine, but when you can see yourself on the screen, that is always distracting. But what I did also in conjunction with that is I put myself out there. I tried new things, and with that, increased my confidence. And not just in my own ability to do something. I've always been fairly confident that I can do the task set at hand, but confident that other people want to hear what I've got to say. And I think that is the bit that suddenly catapulted me into this ability to set up the business and to define the juxtaposition between the customer and the business and fill that gap so that you can start to bring clarity to chaos.
Thank you for sharing that. I really do appreciate you clarifying that bit. With regards to technology, this Zoom, Teams, call it what you like, but recording capabilities is an amazingly powerful tool that I think most people have become pretty good at over the last 4 or 5 years since the pandemic because we had to. Before then, I recall feeling very uncomfortable also being on a video, thinking this is quite intrusive. Why would people want to see your, I don't know, your spare room, your office, whatever it was then? To the point where we are now, where actually it just becomes second nature, doesn't it? And I think if you can do this, connecting face to face in the virtual sense, you can pretty much do your job anywhere in the world. And I know you cover various continents. How do you find that works for you? Do you need to physically travel so much?
No, not so much now. There was a period in my career where I was traveling many times a month, and that got very busy. But with the change of working, where we do rely on video calls, I can do everything pretty much from one location. I live on the South Coast in England, and I could be anywhere. Adapting to time zone changes is not a problem. Calculating the time zone difference can sometimes be an issue, especially during daylight savings. But yeah, no, it's been fairly straightforward.
So the kind of work that you do with Saltware Solutions, what is that? What does that look like? What does a normal project start like? And does it follow a straight line?
Not a straight line as such. My specialities are product management, so within the software engineering side of things, but also customer success. So on the other side, we have software that's available, but both represent the middle part of hearing something and interpreting it to others. And that's the bit that I feel that there's a big space for. There's a gap where people need the interpretation of what they're saying that makes sense into the company. So it's taking something from outside and making sure that it's clear for the inside. I do that through diagrams, process flow, but also the written word. And bullet points are my friend. Taking a block of text and then being able to convert it into something that's meaningful. We do start to use AI to do some of that. But there's nothing better for learning than processing some information yourself. So AI is brilliant at summarizing some information. But if you really want to understand the topic, you will have to do some reading to get to the bottom of what it is. That's certainly what I found anyway.
Presumably your background in marketing comes in very handy in deciphering the quality from the quantity and
Yeah.
the meaning from the noise.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you recognize techniques that are there. A friend of mine shared a recording. It was like this. It was like an interview style recording of a company that were talking about his company. And it was a marketing approach, but was all AI generated. You spot what they're trying to do. It's a fantastic approach to selling, but you do spot the sort of call to action, you spot the products that they're trying to sell, and you spot the massaging of someone's ego, to be quite blunt.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is interesting, being able to decipher what somebody is saying.
So I'm curious how you got into clinical trials. You mentioned about working in early phase. That's somewhere that I've also done a lot of work over the last few years. How did you get into that in the first place? What was the opening the door moment?
Part of it was my father who owned the company, and that was providing a system that was doing bedside data collection in a phase one clinic, but with time driven events, time driven procedures. So it wasn't just entering data at the bedside at any time, it was protocol driven time. And as working in a phase one clinic, things are really important to get at the right time. The pre-dose procedures may be a little bit more flexible, but as soon as that dose is in the body and post-dose procedures are taking place, you want to make sure that the time between them and the time between subjects is maintained so that you've got good equivalence of evaluating the data that comes out at the end. Protocol time, it's not just collection time, it's actually what's driving the system. So that piece of software, there was not many competitors on the market. Most of the competitors were homebred systems that companies, large CROs, large pharmas were creating themselves, but needing to have a commercial system that would do a lot of that work for them, because software development is not cheap. You're having to constantly evolve and invest in those systems to keep them up to date. Not only was it time driven, but it was also device driven. So we talk about eSource, we talk about data coming from a device into a system, EDC or bedside data collection, as we called it. And that's just one aspect of eSource. You've got lab results, you've got a human entering it real time, and you've got multiple ways of getting the data into the system. And so we had the challenges of technology, of hardware, legacy systems like electrocardiograms that had a telecoms port, and you had to get that connected to a computer that's only got a USB. So some of those hardware challenges were fun to solve as well.
I appreciate you sharing that. As you were describing that, I was taken back to the early 2000s and my first experience of early phase as well. I think we had all the same challenges. We must have been doing the same things concurrently because it just was such a difficult time. I'm not a technologist, or at least I didn't think I was. What I've learned over the last 20 odd years and more is that adaptability. You figure things out on the fly, don't you? Things don't come with a rule book. They certainly very rarely come with an instruction manual how to connect historic to future.
Exactly.
Thankfully, there are some wonderful technologies around there now. But I think the real value in experience and wisdom is having seen how it's done from, like you said, early electronic data capture, EDC tools, from paper, from eSource to where we are today, which is a completely different world of integrated data software. It's still not perfect by any stretch, but it's a lot more integrated than it ever was.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering what you're seeing now in the market, some of the amazing tools that are out there. Is there anything that really fuels your fire right now?
I still got a great passion for eSource. Early phase systems, I think, are starting to morph into the more traditional EDC, and companies are wanting to span phases, not just have one system for one phase and a different system for another phase. And people are exploring how to integrate new technology faster. So how do we adopt systems that seem a little bit scary or a little bit worrying? How do we include those in our portfolio of products that we're using? And I think time has helped with that. Subscription model has helped. People are more comfortable with setting up cloud-based systems that help them do their work. So we're definitely seeing an improvement there. I think the challenge will be integrating useful AI tools into a company's portfolio, because you've got different types of models. It's the variability of a generative system that we've got to be careful of, because it can create hallucinations. It can create results that can potentially be shared outside of your ecosystem. So a couple of compliance related concerns that are still on my radar, but I think companies are certainly learning to adapt faster. That's definitely what I'm seeing.
We talked about it when we were face to face in Prague, I know,
Yeah.
about the human in the loop. And at a number of conferences I've been to in the last year where there's been regulators, there's been conversation around audit trails, visibility, what we're now calling AI, generative AI, and agentic AI. None of those things I think are problematic, but what the regulators reinforced time and time again, certainly when I was in the room, were making sure that, as we would always do, what you're planning to do is what you're doing, you're
Mm,
documenting all of those steps. And irrespective of what we call these things today versus what we called them 20 years ago, there is a clear structure and a delineation and an understanding within those instruction manuals, within the guidelines that aligns to the data that's being collected, perhaps in real time, but certainly at a later point may well be analyzed with that in mind. I'd just
mm.
love you to share your thoughts around that particular point.
The ability to store the information is expanding. I think what we can do with compliance concerns is maybe attack the effort. So, for example, if you get a new system and you need to test it, rather than spending lots of man hours on trying to write the test script, you can use generative AI in that instance to help speed up the process of creating steps. And then you refer to human in the loop. So you can have humans testing the software manually based on the tests that the computers put together. So I see that as a good way of complying with the regulations because you can verify that the test script is right before you run it and matches your expectations. But the risk is quite low because you've got that human in the loop element. If you get into testing automatically on that test script, you've got not necessarily the same verification that it was right to begin with. So putting in those sort of checks and balances is really important with those systems. Not sure if that answers your question, but those are sort of my thoughts around validation specifically.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. It's really relevant to something that I'm doing for a particular client at the moment. And it comes back to that point around the hallucinations, isn't it? It's making sure that at every decision point, never mind in writing scripts, and we're going into the detail here, in writing those scripts, the user requirements that there is a human involved there, as much as then when it's being tested, that there's also a further human intervention or review at that particular point. So I think it's very helpful. Thank you. With regards to your experiences of being an entrepreneur and going out and finding work, how do you do that? Because it's something that I'm challenged with. And as I've mentioned, I always feel like I'm between work. When you're not working, you're between projects, a bit like an actor. How
Yeah.
do you go out? How do you find the work? How do you tell people you're offering this service?
So amazingly, I've got some long-term customers that are keeping me in business and keeping me very busy. So haven't had to experience it too often. I like the idea of picking up a long-term contract at the moment to get me started. Going forward, who knows what could happen? Taking on somebody else would be an amazing achievement for 2026 because I'd love to train up younger people to learn how to be curious, how to ask questions to move forward. So, yeah, I haven't had to do it too often, but when I have had to do it, I've reached out to people that I know and asked for conversations like this, but where you discuss where the market's going, what the industry's doing, and you look for opportunities that might come out of the conversation. Job boards and things are really cluttered. So going down that route is very hard. So that's been my tactic to date. It's worked out fairly well. Not sure what's going to happen next because with long-term projects, you don't have to work on promoting yourself as much. So that is a bit of a challenge, but being on LinkedIn every now and again helps.
LinkedIn is definitely a very worthwhile tool. And
Yeah.
I think putting yourself out there on webinars and presenting is also very helpful. As much as I think when we've spoken, sometimes it's just doing the uncomfortable things, isn't it? Sometimes
Mhm.
it's posting a little bit more about yourself, maybe sharing some thought leadership ideas, a white paper, those types of things. Anything that really brings you to the attention of this relatively small industry in which we work, where people seem to know one another. You must find it as much as I do. You're stumbling across the same people in different organizations, in different guises, and maybe they look slightly different or a little bit older or whatever. But the reality is that there are a lot of regular, familiar faces that come up time and time again. And I also do value the opportunity to meet with those people face to face
Yes.
in conference settings, because that's really where you get some quality interactions, isn't it?
It really is. And that's what I'm doing on Monday. I'm going to be going to a day conference symposium to make sure that I stay connected with people. Don't know who I'm going to see. There was a couple of people that I recognize, but actually just being somewhere like that and being confident to have those conversations is part of the selling process. It's invisible, but it's really important.
You know what? I have found that there is a payment that pays back over the long term. I think
Yeah.
it's the visibility of posting that you're at these particular events, as much as you just never know when those offline conversations are going to happen around a coffee bar, a water cooler, a buffet station, whatever that might be. Those lovely tall places where we all stand and we try and juggle some sandwiches, try not to spit them all over one another while we're telling people what we're doing. Those are my favorites.
Those are the best. Yeah.
You shared quite a lot of your background, how you got into this industry. And what about the future? What about the future for Saltware Solutions? You mentioned also that you'd be keen to bring in people into your organization. As you were saying that, I was thinking there's a couple of guys in my team of mentees that I think would love to get to know you. So that might be a conversation for another day. But
Yes.
what do you see the future of Saltware Solutions over the next couple of years with respect to technology, how that might enhance your work, and potentially how that might save some air miles?
I'm all the time documenting what I'm doing because I don't know what growth there will be going forward. I think that's a good rule of thumb in your life, in business, is to write down the things that are important. And part of the reason for doing that is succession planning. I'm a little bit young to be thinking like that, but I'm still thinking there's always a possibility that you cannot be in a place at the same time as when you're needed. So having somebody else to do some of the things that I do, not just admin, because I think that's a little bit boring for people, but also being given a little bit of trust to go and do some of the same things, starting to ask questions to uncover people's challenges. And I think that is a real skill. I think younger people are taught how to ask questions, but maybe lack in the sort of social skills of doing something in real life. This is a bit of a generalization, but what I want to do is to help the next generation. So some of those things that over the next couple of years, I really want to go into local colleges and help young people to be confident in going out into the workplace, whether that's entrepreneurship or whether that's just working for a big company, but finding out what they're really keen to learn on, what their values are, what their drive is. So that's one thing I'd like to do. And then as far as the business and expansion, I've still got a soft spot for software. So staying within the software realm is really important to me. Using tools to improve efficiencies and to reduce waste is the other area. So again, it's really unusual to not be creating a product and not be necessarily selling a common service. But I think understanding software, having developed it, and then being able to translate it to other people will help companies who just rely on software so much.
I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you. I wouldn't be doing my job as interviewee if I didn't pick up on the reducing waste point. What do you mean by reducing waste when you're talking around software solutions? Because I immediately was thinking around energy savings, but what you're meaning by reducing waste.
Okay. An example would be somebody who is copying and pasting something from a document into a form on a web page. It's not just that you have to do it line by line or that you're, I don't know, formatting it as you go. There are other ways to improve collection of information or entering of information. Another example would be last year, a random project that I got involved in was selling architect software. It was a bit of a deviation from my core skills, but it was something that a friend introduced me to. and I tried it. And what I did is I manually went to a bunch of websites to get their contact details. And it took me a very long time. And after that, as AI became much more useful, I was able to then say, now get me the contact details. And within seconds, I had all the web addresses, phone numbers, contact details of the sites around me. So thinking outside of the box a little bit and looking to improve processes to reduce waste. That's what I mean.
Okay. That makes sense. And thank you for elaborating. That does connect the gaps in my understanding around that. That's very helpful. Thank you, Duncan. At this point in the conversation, I like to go on to a quick fire round. And I wonder, what is the one piece of advice, Duncan, you would give to your younger self?
Be confident in your abilities and what other people think about you. Definitely to do that.
What are the top 3 qualities you value most when building a team?
Determination, curiosity, and integrity. So for integrity, it's really just being honest and being consistent with principles, always doing the right thing. For determination, that's being brave and strong in the face of adversity and committing to persevere through those challenges. Not just work challenges, but also, I know that this is really close to your heart, is mental health challenges as well. That's really important. And not just from an employee perspective, but from an employer perspective to help others to face those challenges. And then with curiosity, I just love understanding people's perspectives and not just asking questions to be difficult, but actually to open up the conversation and to help people solve their problems.
I love that. Thank you for that. And your favorite thing outside of work, Duncan?
I'm a very practical person, so I like to build stuff out of wood, but it has to solve a problem. It has to have a purpose.
That's perfect. And finally, what is your number one golden rule in life and in business?
I totally agree with Lee Fell from Caritas Bioscience when she said that looking out for others, thinking of other people, putting yourself in their shoes, thinking about how they would feel, and then applying that to yourself really helps when you're dealing with other people.
I love the quote that you brought in from Lee. She's great. And actually, I think the two of you would get on incredibly well.
Awesome.
You're very similar. And I'm glad you've linked back to that earlier podcast. So for our listeners, Lee Fell was someone that I interviewed a little while ago, and she's available on all podcasting channels on Pharma Prescribe. We've touched on so many different things today, Duncan. This has been incredibly instructive to just understand the person behind Saltware Solutions, the reality of being an entrepreneur, driving through determination, through coming out the other side of redundancy, and really just defining your own truth in every aspect of your life, from being a parent of 4 kids, which I have to mention again because I think that's remarkable, by the way, all the way through to standing on your own 2 feet and turning up at those conferences on your own. I know what that feels like. That's tough. That's difficult. It's not easy, is it? It's just your name over the door. So I really do credit you with an awful lot of strength and conviction around that. And this has just been a very interesting and insightful conversation amongst hopefully 2 friends. So thank you for coming on Pharma Prescribed today, Duncan. It's been a pleasure and a delight to welcome you. And I look forward to continuing the conversation at another point.
Thank you so much, Adam. It's been a fantastic conversation. Always interesting to talk to you. Thank you.